first of all, I would say, to my mind, the deal doesn't differ enough from Theresa May's disgraceful surrender instrument. But from what I understand, some of the measures in the deal that he's offering are unlikely to be accepted by the European Union, as I understand it. Frankly, I'll be pleased about that, because my view is that until we've actually really left, without a specific EU deal, of course, don't forget we'll have loads and loads of other deals. So to call it no deal is really a lie, a misnomer. But my view is that that is the best way for us to leave, because my view is that we will have a much stronger negotiating position once we have successfully left. And the reason I think that is because I think that actually, if we do leave in that way, the sky will not fall in. And in fact, UK will do fine. And it will be, I often nickname it Y2K2. For that reason, that all the gloom and doom that has been talked about, very little of it will either come true or matter very much. And so once we're in a strong position, having left, and it is shown that that we will do perfectly well having left, then I think the urgency, the need of the European Union to sustain their high level of exports to us will be the driving factor. We have a huge trade deficit with the EU, and so we know that Germany right now is possibly going into recession, so I think that the EU will be forced for simple commercial imperatives to actually get on and do what they should have done long ago, which is a fair and reasonable agreement with the UK, hopefully to continue very much as before. Article 24 of GATT does enable countries to agree to continue trade while they negotiate future arrangements, and so that would enable us simply to continue trading with the EU as we currently do. And of course, the EU, in its negotiating tactics, has shown no interest in that kind of arrangement, really. But although, in fact, I think it was Theresa May that really rejected that 2 years ago. That is an outcome that I think would be very satisfactory, and I don't think that we will be offered any sort of really sensible deal until we've actually left. People forget that border already is a border. It's a border for currency, and it's a border for taxation. And clearly, it doesn't need to have any great infrastructure there to be a border in those senses. And also, in terms of trade and import-export, these days, so much of trade between countries, whether it's in the EU or outside the EU, so much of it is handled just electronically with forms and emails and just, basic standard paperwork that people have to do. And we do export to large numbers of countries outside the EU, which shows that we're already geared up to do it. So I think that the EU has been using the Northern Ireland border very unhelpfully, probably against its own constitution, by the way, because the EU is committed to facilitate trade wherever possible in sensible ways on behalf of its member states and EU businesses. And in this case, I think that the EU has been going against its constitution by essentially constructing or confecting trade barriers and trade difficulties that need not be there. 85% of voters voted for MPs who stood in 2017 on manifestos which said that they would deliver they would really leave the European Union. And those MPs and the Commons generally, instead of doing what it promised to do during that general election, has done the opposite. They said that they would facilitate and make Brexit happen, and they've actually spent the last 2-3 years contriving every possible obstacle that they could imagine to doing what they promised. Their hypocrisy is grotesque. And for them to criticise Boris on that ground is the most hypocritical thing I've ever seen in British politics, ever. They are the ones, the MPs in the House of Commons, they are the ones who've stood in the way of democracy by refusing to do what they promised us, the voters, they would do to get elected.